Hi, and welcome to The Truth of You. And first, we're going to be talking to you about the creation of the soul. So, at the heart of every single physical human is an energetic energy called the soul. And every single physical human has a higher self soul as well. Now, this higher self soul is actually connected but different to your soul. And this higher self soul, your higher self soul, is the part of your non-physical makeup that actually resides within the non-physical part of the universe. Within this universe, we have 25 dimensions, and we also have the ultimate dimension. Now, the 25th dimension and the ultimate dimension actually cross the multiverses because there are many universes. There isn't just one universe, and they all work together, basically, all loving, all supporting, and more of this later another time. I have learnt some incredible stuff recently, but it's not something I can share at this time, but it will be shared in the future. Okay, so the first point of creation is actually when your higher self and God get together and they make a decision and they decide upon what they want, what is best for all that is in terms of the universe, but also what is best for the higher self in terms of their expansion and involvement. And they create a very special being, which is you. They create a soul. So they pull together a small amount of the higher self energy, some energy of God, and they put together a very special source that's created specifically to achieve all that the higher self and God wants to achieve with this physical incarnation. And the second point of incarnation, or creation should I say, is actually when you are created by your physical humans, parents, into a physical human. So as I said, I'm going to just give you a little example. Angela is my higher self, and God got together and they decided to create me, Amanda. So they took a soupçon of God's energy and a soupçon of Angela's energy, and they made the decision as to what Angela wanted to achieve in this particular incarnation. And they pulled it together and they created like a bouillon, like a stock of aspects of different specific types of energy that they wanted to include in the soul that was to be created and called Amanda. That is me. And I'll explain a little bit more about that later. Okay, so why create a brand new soul? Basically, it's one of the greatest gifts that your higher self can have because it allows your higher self to actually incarnate in the physical world, and it allows your higher self then to expand, and through expansion, ascension can occur. So let me explain a bit about what expansion and ascension is. So ascension is basically you moving up the levels of dimension. As I stated before, we have 25 dimensions and the ultimate dimension. And most physical humans have their higher self that resides on the fourth dimension. I'd say it's the last time I tuned in and got any confirmation on this, it was most people, there's probably 10,000 physical humans with higher selves of 5 dimension and above, and that means there are billions of their physical humans who have their higher self on the 4th dimension. Now, in order for you as a physical human, and the reason you're listening to this and you've been attracted to my work is that you are likely fifth dimension or above, and that you're wanting more, you want to understand more, you have been drawn to this work, and it's time for you now to awaken and remember. And that's basically what I'm going to be doing in this video series. I'm going to be helping you to remember. So on the fifth dimension, it's kind of like a bridge, and then you move into the between the 5th and the 12th. It's a very highly ascended number of dimensions, and what's happening is, as you expand through your activities on the earth in the physical third dimension, your energy gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and it's able to extend up through the different dimensions. So Angela, my higher self, started off in her first incarnation. She basically created her first incarnation, and that incarnation, at that time, Angela's higher self resided on the 4th dimension. And through the thousands, if not millions, of incarnations she's had so far, she has expanded through all of those experiences, and she has now ascended to the 16th dimension through the expansion of the inner being of her physical incarnations. And so all of that expansion and that knowingness and knowledge is within me, because I have some of Angela's energy within me, just as you have some of your higher self's energy within you. So you have access to this incredible infinite wisdom that's been gleaned from thousands of years. If you think about this, and thousands of incarnations, it's actually millions of years. If you think about it from that perspective, it's pretty awesome. Okay, so what is really important for you to understand is that everything is equal in non-physical. Everything is energy in non-physical, and it's energy and vibration it's the same word, just different. It has the same meaning, but it's important for you to note that energy is chaotic. It's constantly moving at different speeds, and this is why the dimensions are important, because they actually, it's kind of like a defining, and it defines different frequencies of energy. So each dimension is denotes a different frequency or speed of energy flow. So the higher the dimensions, the faster the energy is moving, basically. So high frequency energy takes up more space, and the higher vibe emotions, the very high frequency emotions of love, pure love, actually move really quickly. The denser low vibration, this is why we call them low and high vibration, the denser low vibration emotions such as hate and guilt, the energy that's actually part and parcel of that emotion, because every emotion is energy in motion. If you break that down, emotion, then it moves extremely slowly. So this is why we have dimensions in non-physical. Okay, so what I want you to just imagine is a hummingbird, for you to understand this a little bit more. A hummingbird is a beautiful creature that actually hovers beautifully when they are feeding. So when they're hovering, they're flapping their wings so quickly that you can't actually see it with the naked eye. And this is what's happening in non-physical. The speed means that we can't actually translate it, because everything is energy. We're translating everything. You're translating my words, but the frequency of my sound is that comes out of my mouth is energy. I'm translating the energy into my ears as I'm hearing. When I'm seeing, I'm translating vibration as well. We're all translating all the time. It just so happens that we're so perfect, we're so expert at it, we don't realize what we're doing. So there are 3 stages of the soul. The first stage, as I mentioned, is the creation of the non-physical human, and that is, then you actually have a pre-physical life. So once your soul is created, you can then have a pre-physical life for some, I know some humans in this and who are incarnated, that their pre-physical life was for 3,000 or 4,000 years. Others are for just a few years. My pre-physical life was for 35 years. Then you go through a process, and which I won't go into at this point, and you become physical, and then you have your physical life, and then you transition into non-physical once you die. But your physical body dies. It's not you, the soul doesn't die, because that then goes into its eternal life, and you are eternal, and you are continuous, and you are constantly growing and understanding and learning and increasing your abilities, capabilities in your eternal life. It's so exciting to finally understand this and get real clarity around this. So it's so important for you to know and to feel into. And some of you may be thinking, I don't think so. So I want you to just allow the energy that is the truth of you just to flow from within you and to begin to fill your cells so that you can feel into the truth of you. And know now that you are utterly unique and that you are eternal. Your physical incarnation is actually a blink in the eye. And you do not have multiple lives. You do not keep coming back into physical to learn anything or transform previous trauma. Let me repeat that. You do not have multiple physical lives, and you do not keep coming back into physical to learn anything or transform previous trauma. Up until my understanding, I've spent 20 years believing that we reincarnated personally, but it didn't feel right to me. It felt like it was correct but not right. And now I understand why, because I was feeling that there was some mistranslation in this. And this has been mistranslated over and over and over again over the years. So what is important to note is that when you actually transition into non-physical, you're met by God and you're met by Jesus, the ascended soul of Jesus, who is the most beautiful and powerful being. And if either of those, God or Jesus, words start to make you feel really like you're going to switch off, think again. Or should I say, feel again. Feel into that. Feel into it more than ever before. And allow the low vibration and all of your perspective around religion just to melt away. And let me now just help you connect to the truth of you. Because the truth of you, at the heart of you, you know that this is the truth, but it's not for me to tell you that you need to believe this. It's for you to feel it. And the more you hear these words, the easier this will be, especially if you are willing to continue and listen to all of this training about the truth of you. And so back to discussing God and Jesus. And actually, just a little anecdote about Jesus. I was so anti-Jesus and anti-God for so many years. I made decisions when I was in my... Well, actually, I believe when I was 9, I made quite a few decisions about God and Jesus. So much so that I had to leave Brownies because we had church parade on a Sunday, and I was so cross that I didn't believe it, and it was boring. And I read a book about the Catholic Church, and I was absolutely disgusted with the misogynistic behaviour and the double standards. So a lot of my belief system and decisions were made at that point. And it was, I would say, about 3 or 4 years ago now that I had been going through the traditional spiritual understanding of non-physical and calling in different beings to help me heal. And I was doing things like cutting cords and doing releasing also, I thought, on experiences I'd had in the past, knowing that I needed to do that. But I actually wasn't achieving anything. I wasn't getting anywhere. And I remember watching Doreen Virtue before I think she was on the cusp. She was on the cusp of changing from working with angels to becoming I think she had become a born again Christian. And she was talking about Jesus a lot, and something sparked an interest in me, and I thought, okay, I'm going to just listen to this. And she basically said, if you don't believe me, call in Jesus and he'll come and heal you. And I thought, oh, and bearing in mind, I am incredibly a believer. I felt incredibly attuned to non-physical at that time. Also, I thought, now I know I was just scratching the surface. So I thought, okay, I'm going to do that. And I'd been following Abraham, as in Abraham Hicks, for probably about 3 or 4 years. And I thought, you know what, I'm going to do it. Why not? If there's an Abraham collective talking about law of attraction, then perhaps Jesus is going to help. And I lay down on my bed and I called Jesus to do healing on me, and I had the most profound experience I've ever had. For the next half an hour to an hour, I felt like my body was being lifted off the bed, and it was absolutely astounding, the healing that came through. And that was a trigger point for me in terms of changing my understanding and perception about non-physical. I'm not a religious person in any way, but because I truly believe that religion has been set up by physical humans with quite a lot of mistranslation in place. But that isn't for me to judge. That is for anyone that chooses to be born into a certain religion and chooses to follow a certain religion. All power to you. It absolutely, as far as I'm concerned, is absolutely perfect path for you. However, for me, it was not. And what I found afterwards was it was actually part of my soul contract that I actually disconnected to anything non-physical. So I needed to make sure that I didn't go into churches and I didn't connect to non-physical in that way. For example, connecting to God in any sort of spiritual way through a religious mode. Anyway, back to this. Okay, so once you've transitioned, you are met with God and Jesus and your higher self, and you meet actually within the Christ consciousness collective. I won't discuss that more now, but I will discuss it at a later date. So this is where you review all that went on in your physical incarnation on earth, and all the understanding and learning is gleaned and pulled together, and that knowing is collated, and then that knowing is then passed on to other members in your collective and other members perhaps of your soul group that will benefit from it. And then what actually happens is the spiritual intention protocol forget, and this is then applied to every single person that has any remaining fear labeled memories, anything that is triggering fear emotions such as anger, hate, self-disgust, guilt, sadness. All of those memories that are still there are they're basically taken away. This forgetting protocol ensures that all the understanding that you've gleaned from the experience that you chose to experience, and the expansion is actually kept, but all the trauma and associated trauma and any of those low vibrational moments and emotions are actually that have been attached are completely forgotten. You can't translate them, you can't feel them, because it doesn't resonate with you anymore. And this is actually a unique capability of mine. It's part and parcel of what I do with when I do my work with people one-to-one. If the higher self of the person I'm working with said it's okay to do that because they've gleaned enough from the experience to be able to expand, and there's no more need for it to be triggering low vibration in them. So all that learning from your higher self, and there are thousands of previous incarnations that your higher selves have had, is within you and your soul, just as I mentioned before. And what's actually happening when you have an Akashic record reading, because the Akashic Records actually is a documentation, an energetic documentation of every single incarnation your higher self has ever had. But it's not you. What can happen is you can have soul images within your soul, and when you go for an Akashic Records reading with highly attuned Akashic Record readers who actually work directly with Archangel Richard, who is one of my guides, because I can do this again. I can do Akashic Records reading only if the higher self and says the higher self of the person I'm working with and Archangel Richard says it's okay, that it's relevant for. It can't be just done in the work that I do, and it's only relevant for people who have had where the higher self has had quite similar incarnations, and they've had a similar soul contract in previous incarnations. So that they actually are shown in the Akashic Records reading for you to understand your own incarnation through the experience of viewing and understanding your higher self's previous incarnation. And I find it absolutely fascinating, actually, that your higher self has had all of these incarnations, but the most exciting thing is that you can actually access these past incarnations that your higher self has had, because you have part of your higher self energy within you. So for example, your higher self used to be a fabulous chef in one of their incarnations. You can actually tune to your higher self by tuning to and asking for that incarnation to flood over you, and then spend your time focusing in and allowing that energy of that part of your higher self to flood through you, because each of those incarnations is an individual. And let me explain a little bit more about that, and by using me as an example. So Angela, my higher self that I know of, well, I've understood 5 incarnations that Angela's had, but I'm going to talk to you about 3 of them. So one of the earliest incarnations that Angela had was Eve, and her emotional signature, because do you remember when I said that you created, that you pulled together, there's all these incredible energies are pulled together to create you, that incredible signature of you. Well, Eve was created in her emotional signature, and the energy that was created for her little soup song was mostly assurance. So she had the energy of assurance flooding through her when she lived. Now, Angela's past incarnation is Sarah, and she is actually one of my guides, and this is really common to happen. So she is a powerful being that comes to guide me for a lot of the work that I'm doing, because my soul contract is very similar to Sarah's soul contract, and her energetic signature, emotional signature, is actually hope. And the previous incarnation to Sarah that Angela had was a lady called Cheryl, and her energetic signature, emotional signature, is happy. Now, Cheryl's life was far from happy. She had a very similar beginning to her soul contract that both Sarah and I did, but she didn't overcome at all. So Cheryl died fairly young and a pretty miserable life, bless her heart. So she then, so Angela decided, because Cheryl didn't achieve what she was supposed to achieve in terms of the wondrous bits, she added some more chisel to Sarah's energetic makeup, because it's basically creating a recipe. That's what I understand it as. So she added some more incredible stuff, and Sarah managed to create the most wondrous life from the most unpleasant of beginnings. And then comes me, Amanda. My incarnation, my energy signature is power. So I have a powerful energetic makeup, and the energy that's within me, within my state of being, is perseverance, because because of the way that I set my contract up, and I'll explain about that later. Okay, so if you could imagine that your higher self is made up of all these individual souls, every single soul that they have ever incarnated onto the earth makes up the energy of your higher self, and they are uniquely individual, but they're also connected to your higher self, and they're off doing other things in the universe, but they're always connected energetically to your higher self, so you always have access to them. It's a bit mind-boggling, really. So, as I've mentioned, soul contracts. Every single soul has a soul contract, and that is actually initially created between God and your higher self, because the purpose of the incarnation is to further your higher self's expansion and ascension. And so that very, very basic sort of overall soul purpose that's laid out within that soul contract is created, and then the soul is created from understanding what the soul purpose is. So they add a little bit of this and a little bit of that, and they take from another life that she's already had, for example, in terms of mine. So they're like, okay, so Sarah had XYZ, so we're going to put XYZ in, plus we're going to put in H and P, because she needs a bit of extra, because we've learned and grown because of this, and the knowing from Sarah's life enables us to add a bit more in. So that is the basis of the soul contract to start with. And then, as I mentioned before, we all are created with a general state of being, and that state of being is created so that it can achieve the soul purpose that's set out within the soul contract. Mine is perseverance, which is made up of a combination of love plus hope plus faith plus strength plus power, and that is a strong combination of emotions. And that perseverance is absolutely required for my soul contract, because I had to persevere through an awful lot of unpleasantness in order to get to here, to be able to enact a lot of my wondrous capabilities. It isn't the same for everybody. Everybody is different, and it all depends on what you're wanting to achieve. So in every single soul also has a name. It has a colour. Now, mine is a greeny yellow colour. It's kind of like nature. The colour that you would look out onto if you were to look into a forest, and you would see these different types of greens and yellows. That's my colour. And all souls have an energy signature. As I mentioned before, mine is power. And power is actually made up by love and strength. And I'll explain more about that another time. But all you need to know is I have a power element to me. And we all have a purpose. My purpose is freedom from all and freedom for all. And that is my passion, to free us all from what is holding us back, from focusing on what was and stopping us from focusing on now and future focus. And every single soul has a desire to evolve. Now, what is really interesting, and without a doubt a mistranslation of karma, karma has been mistranslated over the years, is that what has happened for me, and this happens so often with higher self souls, is they build on an incarnation. So as you saw, or as I mentioned, Cheryl and Sarah, both the past two incarnations of Angela, my higher self, they basically had very similar soul contracts. And so my soul contract is almost identical, but just with some more difficultness in to expand me further. And what happens is that this is really common for higher self souls to incarnate and then get to a point where they didn't do it, or oh my god, they did a great job, so let's see what we can do next time to build on it. And it's often happening, this often happens, particularly around the time when the higher self is looking to ascend. Because when you get into a dimension, perhaps, because Angela's in the 16th dimension, but there are layers to the 16th dimension. So no doubt Angela was thinking, right, I'm going to ascend by Cheryl living and doing what she needed to do. But she didn't ascend into the 17th when Cheryl transitioned, because Cheryl didn't get to the wondrous part. She literally died fairly young of a very unpleasant illness, and it was born out of addiction. So she was an alcoholic, she overate, and she had an abusive relationships, and she had a miserable life, bless her, and was very disconnected. So basically Angela created Sarah, took the same sort of events that she wanted to create disconnection in the early part of her life, but she made sure that she found God, and that's what happened. Sarah found God, and by finding God, because this was in the late 1800s, so that was a really easy way for her to be able to let go, because there wasn't the work that we've done in this sort of, in the last I would say last 100 years in terms of psychotherapy and psychological understanding. So she went and she literally transformed her life and let go of all that was, and literally felt love, and all the wondrousness popped in for her. She had a really strong influence on the world. Now, when I was created, can you see how it works about this mistranslation about karma, where you do one thing and then you come back to sort of make it better? It isn't like that at all, because once you're in non-physical, that's it. You have an eternal life, and you have forgotten all that went on. So then I've been created, and I've been created with a similar unpleasant beginning, but with an absolutely wondrous rest of soul contract, which I'm actually living. This incredible, wondrous, this light with capabilities and amazing connection to non-physical. And yeah, so this is a really interesting point to note. And again, I urge you to feel into the truth of you when you're listening to my words, and to really allow yourself to remember the truth of you. And if you feel anxious, or it doesn't feel right, or you feel cross about what I'm saying, again, feel again, and just take a breath and allow the energy of the truth of you to flow over you. So as you can see, I just want to go through this again. The incarnations of Angela lead to the next incarnation. And what actually is really interesting is that part of one of my soul contract readings stated that Angela is already planning for an incarnation in the future, many of her lifetimes in the future. She's got an aim of what that incarnation is going to do, and what I can achieve in this lifetime is going to help her get to that point. So isn't that fascinating how that works? It's, at first I was thinking, goodness, I feel like a bit of a pawn, but actually it was my choice, and I'll explain a bit more about that later. So what also is really important to note is that if your higher self, this is again a mistranslation, if your higher self is female, each soul that they create is female, and that's the same for males. That is absolutely the same for males. Now, also, what is really important to note and remember is that every single form of sexuality and fluidity is absolutely respected and loved completely and utterly in non-physical equally. There is no judgment. Anyone that is listening to this that feels that they're in the wrong body, that feels that they love women and they're women, or men if you're gay, it makes no difference, because it's so contracted that this is the way for you to be able to stretch you. You are absolutely perfect as you are. Absolutely 100% perfect. So please remember that. Please note that you are utterly loved, no matter what certain religion books state. You are loved and accepted.